There's a small device that's been quietly spreading across Europe for about a decade. It's not complicated. It doesn't require a contractor, a permit, or even a phone call. And in much of the United States, plugging one in still sits in a legal gray area. And depending on where you live and what equipment you're using, it may conflict with local electrical or utility rules. That's the part that's hard to get your head around at first. So there's this image that keeps coming up when you look into residential solar. The rooftop installation, the contractor on the ladder, the permits, the inspections, the interconnection agreement with your utility company, the 30-page application, the wait, the cost, somewhere around $20,000 to $30,000 depending on where you live. And at the end of all that, you get clean energy on your property. That's what solar looks like in America. That's the version most people picture. But if you spend any time looking at what's been happening in Europe, Germany specifically, you start to notice something that feels a little off, because the version of solar that's become common over there looks almost nothing like that. It's flat. It mounts to a balcony railing or leans against a wall or hangs off a fence. There's a cable. There's a small box about the size of a paperback book. And then there's a plug that goes into a standard wall outlet. That's it. No electrician, no permit, no contract with your utility. You register it online in about 10 minutes, and then you're done. They're sometimes called balcony solar systems, and somewhere between 3 and 4 million of them are running across Germany right now. When I first came across that number, I honestly wasn't sure it was accurate. 3 to 4 million in apartment buildings and rental flats and houses, just quietly sitting on railings generating power. The basic idea is surprisingly simple once you understand it. Sunlight hits the panel. That creates direct current electricity. The small box, called a microinverter, converts it into the same kind of electricity that comes out of your wall outlet. And when you plug it in, that electricity starts flowing into your home's circuit. What happens then is kind of elegant in a low-key way. Any appliance running on that circuit, your refrigerator, your router, a lamp, draws from the panel first before pulling anything from the grid. Your electricity meter literally slows down. You're consuming less power from the utility company in real time. The savings aren't dramatic. Depending on your local electricity rates and how much sunlight you get and how much power you're using while the sun is out, you're probably looking at somewhere between $50 and maybe $200 a year in offset costs. It's not free energy. It's more like shaving a portion off your bill, maybe 10 or 15%, maybe a bit more. But the appeal, the reason millions of people in Germany have one, isn't really about the size of the savings. It's about the access. Because for a renter or someone in an apartment or someone who doesn't have the capital or the credit or the roof ownership for a full installation, this is the first version of solar that actually works for their living situation. And that's precisely where things get interesting in the American context. Because if you look into why these systems are legally complicated in the United States, the answer isn't really that the technology is dangerous. It's that the regulatory framework that governs home electrical systems in this country was written in a different era for a very different kind of problem. The National Electrical Code, specifically the section that deals with how power sources connect to the grid, was largely designed around industrial-scale rooftop installations, big arrays, commercial buildings, systems that needed formal interconnection agreements and dedicated breakers, and permanent warning labels so that electricians working on the system later would know that power could flow from somewhere unexpected. A device you buy online and plug into a kitchen outlet wasn't something that framework was originally designed around. And for years, that left plug-in solar systems in an awkward position where the technology existed, but the rules and certification pathways weren't fully aligned with it. There are real technical questions involved, to be fair. One of them is about what happens when your solar panel is producing power and the grid goes down. If power from your panel is still flowing outward onto utility lines and a repair crew is working on those lines assuming everything is dead, that's a legitimate hazard. It's called islanding. And the way modern certified equipment handles it is by detecting the loss of grid frequency and disconnecting automatically within a couple of seconds. Part of the challenge was certification. For years, there wasn't a widely recognized certification framework specifically designed around this category of plug-in solar equipment in the United States. More recently, dedicated testing and certification pathways have started emerging, which is one reason the conversation around these systems has accelerated. But standards, certification programs, manufacturers, utilities, and state regulators don't all move at the same speed, which means the practical landscape is still evolving. There are also more technical concerns that electricians tend to raise. One involves the way circuit breakers measure current from the panel side, and how a plug-in inverter feeding current from the outlet side can theoretically cause a wire to carry more load than the breaker can see. That's a real mechanism. Whether it's a significant real-world risk in a typical household with a small system remains a subject of debate among professionals. Germany, for its part, concluded the risks were manageable. They developed a dedicated technical standard for these systems. They capped them at 800 watts per household. They gave renters the explicit legal right to install them without landlord interference. And they now have years of operating experience from millions of installed systems without the widespread safety failures that many critics initially worried about. That gap between what the regulatory framework says and what the operational experience shows is kind of the core of the whole situation. Utah became one of the first states to clearly establish a pathway for plug-in solar systems at the state level. And since then, a growing number of states have started exploring similar approaches. The exact rules vary, and the regulatory picture is still changing, but the direction of travel is becoming easier to see. The catch, and this is important if you're someone who's looked into this after seeing the European videos, is that certified equipment remains relatively limited compared to the number of products available online. That can make it difficult for consumers to understand exactly which systems comply with emerging standards and which do not. There's also the insurance dimension, which doesn't get talked about much. Depending on the policy, uncertified or non-compliant electrical equipment can create complications during a claim investigation, which is one reason many homeowners prefer to stay within recognized standards and local requirements. I find the whole thing kind of fascinating, honestly, not because of the energy politics side of it, that part feels familiar, but because of what it reveals about how regulatory systems handle novelty. There's a device that works, that millions of people are using, that makes solar accessible to renters and apartment dwellers in a way traditional rooftop systems often can't. And it spent years in a kind of regulatory limbo, not because the technology didn't exist, but because the rules were written before this category became common. And updating rules takes longer than inventing things does. The people arguing for caution aren't all wrong. The certification concerns are real. The insurance issue is real. Buying uncertified equipment from an online marketplace without knowing what you're plugging in is a legitimate problem. Not because balcony solar is inherently risky, but because cheap hardware with no safety testing actually can be. The people frustrated by the delay aren't wrong either. The technology is real. The international experience exists. And the regulatory framework is gradually adapting to something that clearly isn't going away. What you're left with is something in between, a technology that works, a regulatory system that's still catching up, and a gap between them that still matters if you're someone trying to make practical decisions right now. If you're curious about which states currently have plug-in solar legislation or what the certified equipment landscape looks like as it develops, I left some resources in the description. It's genuinely worth looking into if you're in a renting situation or just interested in where this category goes over the next couple of years. It's one of those things that feels pretty minor on the surface, a panel on a balcony, until you start pulling the thread. Then it turns out to be about a lot more than that.